are live. What's up, everyone? This is the Law Mundo, and we are back with another edition of the Law's Roundtable, episodio número 8. Yes, guys, we are back with the 8th episode here, and I'm joined once again by an amazing guest. You might have seen a lot of her photography as of recently because of things like Photoville. If you read the New York Times, you might have seen her pictures there. Guest, could you introduce yourself?
Hi guys, my name is Sophia Vasquez. I'm an Ecuadorian photographer from the Bronx, who's a wrestling person as well.
That's usually thing. What do we call ourselves? Are we wrestling? Like I feel like Frank from GoPro put it best. We're production crew because we do everything but the stuff in the ring. Like if you're part of if you do photography, if you do videos, all that, it's like. It's still the ins and outs of wrestling too. Like this is something a lot of people don't look at. Like, especially wrestling in the indies, it's like it's not just the stuff in the ring. Especially nowadays, like everything is media, everything is pictures, and it's a lot of content. Like I love how she had to say it at the beginning because this is how at least like we became friends as well. Is because in wrestling, at least independently, there's not many Ecuadorians. So I'm happy to find another.
There's not many of us anywhere.
I'm happy to finally find another paisana because we have another one that's a good friend of ours, Hoke, who also finally someone else that is Ecuadorian. So at least there's a few of us. There's a few of us around.
I made a joke with Hoke. I was like, we should do a tag team like Ecuadorian excellence or some shit like that. It was like some joke because when I first met him, I knew he was Ecuadorian. I was like, oh, so where are you from? He's like, Manta. I'm like, oh, Salinas. I'm like, La Costa. We're out here.
Oh, man. But
where's your family from?
Most of my family is from Cuenca and Sucua.
Ah, I love Cuenca so much, but I always joke I've only been in Cuenca for hours because it's always when we go road tripping, we usually try to go up to like Quito and such. Cuenca's like a rest stop. And I was like, well, why is it a rest stop? It's so nice.
It's funny. Usually Quito's my rest stop. Because we'll land in Quito. Like every time I've gone flying, I've landed in Quito and then gone to Cuenca. So I've never been like a whole day in Quito. Maybe if we decide to stay the night before. But even then, it's only a few hours. It's sleeping and then you go.
Exactly.
And
Cuenca's like the same way.
Yeah, trust us, guys. Like, we're not talking about this because it's like, oh, but it's like going from Brooklyn to Queens. No, it's like
we go through mountains.
Like,
we go through the Andes.
Like it's a journey going from one place to the other. And like even recently, last time I went, it was after a lot of the earthquakes and a lot of the water is just passing. Like a lot of the areas are not the same. Like now it's even worse to get through. Like usually it would be like an hour to get past somewhere. Now it's like 2-3 hours, and it just makes the journeys even longer. Yeah. I always feel like I have to carry gum just because like every time I ride in the mountains, you get that ear popping sensation. There was like
it's like wow. That and like because the Andes is when we were going to Loja, we went through Cuenca, but we left really late, and we were in the mountains for 3 hours at midnight, and it's scary. It's like you can't see anything. You just have to trust that you're just gonna be circling and circling. God
you're hoping
forbid.
You're still on the road. Like it's like
yeah.
Oh, okay. Like, because you're literally there. Like this is not like how in the city here you have like actual bridges and all that. Like this is legit. You're riding on a mountain basically, and one wrong turn, there's nothing.
Oh, you're gone.
Like,
and also, Ecuadorian buses are notoriously fast for no reason. Like when you try to catch a bus in Ecuador, it's like you gotta hop on and hop off type situation. And they still try to do that on the mountains. Like, there's been a lot of bus accidents because just zooming. And I'm like, you can't do that.
It's like, I don't know where they're going so fast. Like, I remember every time, like, I only did, like, since my first time going to Ecuador, I've never gone on the bus again. Like, I'd rather pay the few bucks in a cab, because the cabs are so cheap over there, too. Especially if you're coming from here, like in the States. To us, maybe sometimes a max you'll pay on a cab is like $3, if that.
Yes.
So it's like, and even like a long journey, you might end up paying like $20 or something, if that. So it's like, to over there, I'm like, yeah, I'd rather not do the bus.
Economy is so bad, also.
Like
that's also why our economy is horrible.
Yeah, this is true. This is really true. And it's like, yeah, I'd rather not do that bus. Because I remember once doing it, I'm like, why are we having to jump off? Because it's like, oh, wait, is it going to stop? It's like, oh.
No, it slows down just a little bit for you to, like, hop off. But there's been times when my dad's like, okay, the bus is coming. I'm like, all right, we're going to go stop. Like, my dad's like, no, you got to get ready. I'm like, wait, we got to jump? And it's like, it slows down, and you just got to jump off. I'm like, you know... 10 years old, 11, when I started visiting Ecuador, that was fun. But like at 21 with bad knees, I'm like, I'm gonna die.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, I've taken too many bumps. I don't wanna do this no more. No, I'm good. I'd rather take the cab. Like,
yeah.
And no, the worst thing, I will say this about taking the cabs though, you have to have like singles or something. Because if you try paying with a big bill, expect to get paid back in change.
Just like quarters, they'll do an sucre as well. You're like, wait a minute. All of that.
I'm like, oh. But again, this is why, like, I always have these type of combos with Hoke, because it's like, no one else gets this but us. No one understands these little things that's like, but outside of that as well, like you mentioned, you're a wrestling person, like we're calling ourselves now. Yeah. Let's start there, I guess. What got you into wrestling photography? Like,
so I guess like to start from the beginning, how I got into wrestling, because it kind of coincides.
Yeah, of course.
I always joke that my grandpa only watched 2 shows, WWE,
okay,
and Casa Cerrado, the Latin Judge Judy, as I call it. And now he watches 3 shows, those 2, and now AEW. But like, to this day, my grandpa just watches WWE live, and if it's not Monday or Friday, or when it used to be Tuesdays, he just goes on YouTube on the TV and just types in WWE, and he'll watch something from the 80s, from 2005. Like, it was just always constantly a thing we had. And also in Ecuador, you know that we sell pirated movies for like $1.
Shh, no one knows that.
That's like the... But I have... it's somewhere in his house, but I have like 2 boxes from like 2013 to 2015 of every Raw, SmackDown, and pay-per-view on DVD, because my grandpa would just buy them in Ecuador. He's like, I don't have to watch it on YouTube, I have it on DVD. So I would just rewatch like DVDs of Raw and SmackDown. Then I'll watch it religiously when it was live. All of that content, and really how I got into wrestling, and then it kind of led to my art, was I always make a joke that I just got a big crush on Dean Ambrose, or now Jon Moxley. But I had a big crush on him, so of course as a teenage girl, I'm like Googling the hell out of him, you know, to like print out photos of him to put on my locker and walls. And then you find out about Jon Moxley. And then you find out about CZW. Then you find out about Sami Callihan. Then you find out about Joe Gacy. Like, you find out about like everyone. And that's kind of how, like, I got exposed to the world of the indies. Yeah. And also, at this time, the current roster was NXT. So Sasha, Bailey, Sammy, Finn, Charlotte. They were the NXT roster back when I got into wrestling. So then I found out about El Generico, and then I found out about Ring of Honor. And I was always a big fan of, like, on Tumblr, like, fan art and photographs.
Yeah.
Sort of like in that fandom about those wrestlers. So in my head, I was always kind of had this interesting visuals about wrestling culture and fandom. But in all sincerity, I thought that independent wrestling was like a Midwest thing. I didn't think it existed on the East Coast. I didn't think New York City had an independent wrestling scene. So when people tell me about, you know, Homicide, Amazing Red, Pinky even, being, doing wrestling, or even Santana Ortiz, like doing wrestling in the 2000s, early 90s in like Brooklyn and the Bronx. I was like, that's not a real thing. It's like, I don't believe that. Because in my head, it was like an Ohio thing or an Illinois thing. Like, that was just how it was. And so, that kind of is how like my fascination of wrestling began. And I kind of incorporated it into my art in high school, where I was a graphic designer first. I think I used to make like edits about like, I used to love Stardust. Everyone like teases me because it's like, it's like Cody Rhodes is better as Cody Rhodes. It's like, I loved him as Stardust. I thought Stardust was fucking great. And I just loved that whole character, the aesthetic. So visually it was always with me. And then as a photographer, I started doing photography more as like a music. I used to document like music, drag shows, kind of like subcultures.
Yeah.
And then I told myself, I want to document wrestling. But I was like, I have to go to Ohio for that. Or I have to go to Tennessee or Illinois. Like, I really thought it had to be like a long-term goal.
Yeah, not knowing that we're like in the center of indie wrestling.
Center of like so many wonderful wrestlers who, like, many of them are my friends now. No. And the way I kind of fell into wrestling photography, sort of like chronologically, was are you familiar with the Bronx Native Shop down in Mount Haven?
It rings a bell, but I can't like.
It's like a little, so it's a little like fashion store. It's like a brand store.
Okay.
But like in 2018, it got like a lot of clout. So everyone in the Bronx and their moms went to that store to sign to be like, hey, can you give us a shout out? Oh, we're like a Bronx local company, yada yada. It was just like the thing. And I was friends with the sister of who owned the store. And I kind of just walked in one day, like, hey, what's up, chilling. And Matt Awesome and the other wrestler, I think his name was Jarrell, walked in saying, hey, Bronx Native, we're a bunch of wrestlers and we're running a show. And my ear perked up like, wrestling in the Bronx? Like, it's like, what? And I eavesdropped and I kind of butted in because they're having like this professional, like, oh, we'll do this media, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm like, you're telling me there's wrestling in the Bronx, like in this borough, like in this community that I'm familiar with? And it's like, yeah, it's happening on Whitlock. Mind you, I live, that's like 6 train, Whitlock, and it's like Elder and Morrison Soundview. I'm Morrison Soundview. So I'm like, this is like a 15-minute walk for me. And I was like, yeah, I have to do this. I was like, I know we just met, but I'm photographing this. Like, they're like, oh, do you have experience? I'm like, no, but I can learn type thing. And I kind of give credit to Matt Awesome because when I showed up, they didn't remember me, but Matt Awesome did, and he just kind of like, hey, you want to photograph? He like gently pushed me to ringside. He's like, go photograph ringside. Do what you got to do. And he's like, just watch out for the bodies because, everyone's flying and shit. And I think I photographed on my first day of wrestling, no particular order. I know I photographed Pinky Sanchez, Homicide, Dan Moff, Steve Mack, Jarrell, TJ Marconi, Sebastian Cage, sort of like the Bronx scene and the Brooklyn scene. Just
basically just a lot of icons there, and you're just like, on my first day, I just got to.
I think I photographed. I think someone said he was there, but I don't remember. I think Eddie Kingston was there.
If I know what show this is, especially that you're naming, formerly known as EC Negro Jarrell, that should have been a night, like a Now You Create show. Yep, Eddie Kingston, I think was definitely there. Eddie was there.
Oh shit, I photographed Eddie Kingston. Oh shit, I didn't know that. So you see, like, so also, I have to go back and find those photos now because I probably have some cool Eddie Kingston photos I don't even know existed. And also, I also met NV Young for the first time at that show without knowing who he was. And he just started because we talked about it. This is 2018, so he kind of just started.
Yeah, I can remember that he was very still like young in the business.
And he was, I forgot who his opponent was, but he was thrown over the ring and he almost like collapsed into me. And then he fell on the floor and I kind of just looked at him and was just like, hey, like I didn't know what to do. Like he's on the floor and I'm like, hey man. And now 2 years later, we're the best of friends. So it's like, hey, it's a full circle moment. It's kind of like we both met each other right when we were starting out.
Yeah.
And ironically, I think after that show, Create or Die fell through. I was like, I don't know who to contact. I didn't get Matt's contact. And then I found out about BCW, thanks to Pete Rosado, also at Bronx Native, and Matt Awesome kind of bringing me in. And then my second wrestling show, I photographed Jack Swagger, or Jake Hager now. And I was like, and I photographed, who else? And I met like Billy Brash and Ugly Ducklings, who are like this North South Carolina talent. Yep. And I was just like, people travel from the South to wrestle in the Bronx. Like, I was really getting like this gist of like, oh, there is a scene here.
Yeah.
There's a little community here. All of New York City has it, but of course I'm much more biased being from the Bronx and wanting to know more about like this history, because I hear stories that like wrestling in the Bronx existed for years, like from the 1950s and 40s. I met a couple of guys who were telling me like, oh, 166 in Park, there used to be a wrestling show, or back in the 90s there used to be wrestling right near Soundview.
Yep. No, wrestling, it has its history. Like, even I'm a Brooklyn boy. I've always been in Brooklyn, and I grew up, and I'm still here. I think it's like a block away from where Steve Mack, Low Key, guys like that grew up. Yeah. And again, shows were around. And I feel like this is the thing, like, you don't find out, sadly, till like years later, that we're in a gold mine of wrestling. And it's still big, but it's like, back in the day, it's just like seeing how it was born to where we're at now. It's like, it's insane.
It's like a whole different, I mean, right now I feel like we're also like I kind of feel like we're in a generation where the old school wrestlers are still reigning and killing it, but then the students of these old school wrestlers are also in their prime. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Kind of like seeing, the two generations meet, and I kind of feel like we're in this little granted I'm more biased because I've only been a year into wrestling, and this is really only like my second year come October 18th, I think. And I don't know, I just feel like the New York City scene just kind of has like this wonderful bubble of community, great people and great wrestlers and great entertainers that kind of, it always makes me happy to see them kind of leave the New York bubble into like and travel more and kind of like show the other states and countries, even like, this is the New York scene. I'm a Brooklyn kid. I'm a Bronx kid. I'm a Staten Island kid, even though there's like rarely any of those. No offense to Staten Island, but full offense to Staten Island. But like, you know.
It's like it's like we'll take you as New York, but it's like you're still the forgotten borough. Like, leave us alone. But yeah, it's like, I think what we're in the appreciation era of wrestling. Like the independent era that we're in is like, we're all students of the game. Like, myself included, like I've been training, I still train now, and I grew up though on that era of watching Eddie Kingston, Homicide, Low Key, Amazing Red, and it's like I've gotten chances to speak to every single one of them, and it's like just getting to pick their minds in person. It's like, it's a whole new level now. It's like, just to think what wrestling is, and like you said, like there's guys now wrestling against them, and it's like, you can see the little instances of like, oh, he's watched him before. And it's insane.
It's a beautiful thing to see. It's, I still consider myself a young wrestling fan because I was really someone who was just a WWE kid, and then I really kind of just followed like the Shield's breakup, and then Dean and Steph's feud back in 2014, which I still think is like one of the best feuds ever. And a little bit of everything. And then the indies, I'm still gradually learning. Like, sometimes I'll hang out with wrestlers and they'll name drop like 40 people, and I'm like, I think I know like 2 of them. But if you tell me more about them, I'm obviously someone who's very passionate, interested about this, that I have no problem just wanting to like learn more about them and such. Like, it's just kind of like, I always just love meeting new wrestlers and then them telling me about more, because, I'm just like genuinely like amazed by these guys. Like, I just think like, they're freaking cool, and then seeing what they do and then meeting them backstage and how like, just see their passion for it is also like inspiring as well. So yeah, like I'm just like, I just love it. It's just cool.
No, it really is, and I feel like you have to still be that student of the game, especially you're still young in wrestling.
Oh yeah.
Like I'm going in, I want to say in December, my 5th year in wrestling now.
Wow. Cool.
And it's again like the craziest moments, just finding like my story. I've told it a million times. That's like I went to a convention. They're like, hey, for some reason I had a replica belt on me. I feel like I was getting it signed or something. That I was like, okay, yeah. I just had known about the convention. Like, hey, you want to go to an actual show? And I'm like, wrestling? Like, I thought they were trying to sell me WWE tickets. I'm like, there's a show coming? It's like, no, it's this independent show. I'm like, what's independent? And they start explaining. And meanwhile, I find out it's called House of Glory. So I had known a few of the names. Like they mentioned Red. They mentioned that John Morrison was going to be on the card. PJ Black or Justin Gabriel. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I would be down. And no, that was the thing too. I was like, where is it? It's like in Queens. I'm like, oh, this is, okay, I know where I'm at. I know where I'm going to go. And it's like, okay, you know what? Sure. I go, have an awesome time at that show. I met like guys now that I call like family, like Anthony Gangone, Smiley, TJ Marconi, and from that one show I was hooked.
Nice.
How would I would have known though? That's their anniversary show. So I got to go to House of Glory's anniversary show, and from there I'm like, this is amazing. Next show I went to Civil War, seeing Sami Callihan live, and I known about Sami because I've watched like Switchblade Conspiracy and all that. Like it's again, it's the funny thing. Like it was like how you said, we kind of see what indie wrestling is. You just didn't know it was in New York. You thought it was everywhere else but New York City.
In Ohio, Illinois, not the Bronx or Queens. I'm like, what?
I thought it was Ohio because I was a big like Sami Callihan fan. So I'm like, okay, they have wrestling over there. One day I got to make it out to see Sami in person. And then when I see Sami, I'm like, wait, I can see him in New York? And it was at the Elks Lodge. So I'm like, even closer?
Wow. I've only been to the Elks Lodge once, but I hear so many like historic stories.
Oh man,
there.
the Elks Lodge. It's in wrestling. Like it depends on who you hear, because they'll either really shit on the Elks Lodge or they'll tell you the most amazing stories. I can tell you a good one. Just that night, the atmosphere was insane. Because you have Sami Callihan versus Smiley. You have Anthony Gangone versus Johnny Gargano. This is when Gargano was still in the indie scene. Candice LeRae still in the indie scene. She was wrestling Sonya Strong that night. So it's like, you get to see, again, people that are now signed. People are killing it on WWE or in AEW or even in Impact. And it's like, it's insane. And again, these are the little things that, unless you hear like word to mouth, you never know. Like,
yeah, it's one of those things where it's just kind of like, if you didn't know about it or if you didn't know someone who was in it and stuff, it's a whole, you kind of forget about it. Like, I kind of think about wrestling shows that happened before I knew what wrestling in the Bronx existed. I'm like, man, I would love to have been there to see like Sami Callihan, because I was a fan of him too. And it's just like, I didn't know it existed. I thought it was in Ohio.
No, and I'm so mad because I always thought, like, for the longest when I was younger, I only thought it was WWE till years later TNA. I didn't know anything else. So I started doing my research. So I started watching like old ECW, WCW. And then when I found indie wrestling, I got hooked. I started watching. I'm like, wait, so all this was happening here. So I find out about low-key wrestling at the Elks, Homicide, Eddie Kingston. I find out, and this is what still breaks my heart to think, a month before I went to a Hog show, they had Rey Mysterio versus Amazing Red.
Oh my God.
And it's, again, at Jamaica, at the Amazura Arena. I was so mad to think I could have met the reason I'm in wrestling. Like, Rey Mysterio to me is the guy that got me hooked. Because of Rey Mysterio, I even wanted to be a wrestler. And it's like,
I love that.
Like, and again, those are those moments you never know who you're going to see on an indie show.
Oh, definitely.
Like,
yeah,
it's crazy.
You never think you're going to see them.
Like, and again, like, you've taken some photos, though, of people that now, like we mentioned earlier, have been signed, are in places. That has to feel crazy to you to be able to say, I took their photo.
Definitely. I think, I I mean, you saw excited when I found out I photographed Eddie Kingston without knowing I photographed Eddie Kingston. Or even my, I kind of consider, like 2019 to be like when I really started doing wrestling consistently. But October 2018, when I photographed Jack Swagger, I remember We the People. I remember his feud with Rusev, and I was just kind of, and then he got signed to AEW, but I was like, shit, he was WWE before. That's crazy. Or even with Joe Gacy, like the latest signing. Like Joe Gacy was in the first wrestling show I think I did at BCW as well. And I was like, and I knew Joe Gacy from CZW. I was like, oh shit. Like, seeing these types of every wrestler I've met who got signed or got an opportunity, it just makes me happy because in a way it's kind of like, oh, I photographed them in this period of time.
Yeah.
Like, because they're entering a new era of their career and lifetime. And it kind of feels like a privilege to, like, photograph them, in that specific era that's not going to happen again because now it's historical. Now it's archival. It's I got them at this one time before they reached stardom. Because I think all of my photography, especially wrestling, but, I always, in all my art forms, it's always like rooting for the underdog. And a lot of my friends who I'm photographing now, I'm like, man, I can't wait till you guys. I mean, they're already doing great, but I know when, like, so they get like an official signing and such, I'm gonna look back at those photographs with even much more compassion and happiness, because I'm like, man, I remember these little things about the show. I remember how they felt about their match or them calling it such and such, and and it's such like a privilege as well to have that access and trust as well, because I always, with all the accomplishments I've had with the wrestling photography, I've always thanked the wrestlers because it wouldn't be possible without them.
No, of course. And it's those little things. Like, I just had Danny on Nemesis and talking about the opportunities we've gotten to be around. It's insane. And again, for things that we would have never known would be important to wrestling, especially in this era of wrestling now. Photography is insane. You need to have it pictured because everything is moments now. Imagine, like, and I know it's going to happen because you take some amazing photos. You will be featured on one of these big shows. Because AEW does it. They use those independent photos. WWE has done it as well, especially when they sign certain people. So it's like, it's a matter of time. So imagine, you're rooting for people to get signed. It's like, your picture's about to get used. Watch.
Yeah, I know. That's really like an upside to like all of that. It's like, oh yeah, my photography is going out. And even with I found it funny when the New York Times published my thing, they used the photo of Rey Fenix, but they labeled it as like Bronx wrestler, and I was like, not really.
So you mean this photo right here? Like, perfect segue. And what's funny is that for little, like, backstage, she can't see what I just put, so I could be lying, but it is the photo perfectly there. And you see Phoenix getting, I guess, grabbed by the fans, like, hey, are you okay? Like, it's a great photo though. Nope.
It's like, I love it because it reminds me of, I'm also Catholic, so I've seen a lot of religious imagery in my life. And I know, like, when Jesus was walking down, and then all the, like, I think it's a parable about the woman who had leprosy, and then she, like, all of them reach to touch Jesus, like, oh, we're gonna get healed. I just look at it because they look like they're touching him, just trying to be like they're trying to get something. They're like, oh, he's gonna give us some powers, or
they're trying, like, that adrenaline rush they're trying to feel. And I feel like it's very, like, again, photos tell the story. It tells, like, it gives you something. It gives you a feeling of it, and that's why, like, me, I always say I suck with a camera. Like, I could edit something. I could edit video. I can do whatever. But you give me a camera, it's gonna be like, like, even with my phone camera, like, we were all at Synergy this weekend, and I was with my friend Tiff and April, and they were like, no, don't give Ray the phone for the picture. I'm like, damn, all right. Sorry.
Oh, no.
Like, I could color coordinate for you afterward, but sorry. Like, it's the funniest thing. Like, I say I'd rather do the bumps. I'd rather do whatever else. But photography, I give you guys the most respect for because I can't take a picture for shit.
Thank you. I mean, no, I mean, definitely. I mean, also what you're doing right now is a specific set of skills that I don't know in terms of editing, audio, and all this. So like, it's definitely a different skill set. But no, photography, wrestling, like, it's gotten me a minute to sort of like, I kind of feel like my style, which was the flash and the black and white, kind of happened because the venues had shitty lighting. And
I kind of wanted to ask, like, I love the style, by the way. Like, black and white has always been my favorite, especially, like, I love old school movies, so I love the look of it. So it's, like, it's awesome, but I kind of figured, like, was it because of the lighting?
It was a little bit of both. Like, on my first wrestling show, I didn't use flash because I was super new. I didn't want to... I was scared of, like, what if I do the flash and the wrestler... Like, what if he's sitting on the top rope, I turn on the flash and he tumbles or some shit? Like, you know, I didn't want to be responsible for that.
She missed her Fuji-dim. She missed her Fuji-dim.
Exactly. Or, what else? And also, I remember one wrestler had asked me, he's like, oh, like, could you send it to me in color? And I said, to be honest, I said, dude, you look like shit because you're, like, red and there's, like, spit. And in color, it's like saturated, and you don't look good. But in black and white, that shit gets erased, or it gets, you know, it kind of now it's more. I feel like black and white really accentuates what's going on. The color can be. I shoot in color too. I've shot color. In terms of, I like to do a lot of like Polaroids and stuff, or like different types of photography to use color. But my digital camera, I shoot with like the flash. Usually, if there's like good lighting, I don't do it so much. But the black and whites kind of become my aesthetic in terms of kind of capturing the grittiness of wrestling, or what's really going on in terms of like how the wrestlers are moving, the emotions. There's really just like I also kind of play with like shadows as well, because I know you mentioned. Yeah, because I also kind of have like an appreciation for, I guess, old school photography, you can say, or old films. Like Martin Scorsese is one of my favorite directors, and like Raging Bull I like watched recently, but I have seen Raging Bull, like I'd seen clips of it, I had seen the poster, and that sort of like aesthetic is kind of how I put in my photography as well.
It's an art, and it's a lost art. I feel like that, again, that's why I feel like you bring something different to wrestling, because it's something that's a lost art. Like and it's, again, not just to put you over because you're on the show, but like it's something lost. Like that style of photography is even almost transitioned into cinematography, because you are bringing that cinematic style in there. You're bringing something that is seen in movies, and I love the black and white because it allows that the picture tells a story. There's no need for the outside. There's no need for the color in it, because it tells it on its own. And like it's insane. Like
it's its own little narrative. It's its own story, and I think that's what I really try to convey in each image. Because you know, like today I was editing like 3,000 pictures, but you know, maybe out of those 3,000, there's like a solid 20. I'm like, oh, these are great. You know, like these are the strongest ones. These are the ones that can stand on its own. I think one of my photography professors told me that everything in your photo should be quintessential. Like you can stare at this photo and you can be like, oh my god, I just discovered this shadow, or the way this is aligned, or the way the symmetry is, blah blah blah. You can talk about it for days and hours. Those photographs are very hard to come by, but when you nailed it, you know you nailed it. And also, you know, with the art form, with the missing art form, I don't know if many people know this, but there is really a rich, deep history about wrestling photography, because I mean, right now there's a current generation of like amazing photographers from the East Coast, all over the States, internationally, and their work is phenomenal. But I also kind of went back a couple decades to like the 70s and the 60s and the 80s, where I discovered there's wrestling photography there, and how that was photographed. You know, that's shot on film, that's shot on a different medium. And I think I took inspiration from that because, you know, a lot of people say, "Oh, do you shoot on film? What film do you use?" I said, "I don't shoot on film, but it looks like I shoot on film." If that makes sense.
See, but that's great though, because it's a, again, you found something and you found your way, and I feel like, again, your mindset is perfect for wrestling because you decided to study it. You decided to study older cinematography and that style of photography there. That's like,
yeah,
okay, so now you know the history of it, and it gains that appreciation for it as well. This is why I said we're in that era of appreciation. That's like, this is why you always catch wrestlers watching tape and studying back, because it's like you want to gain the respect for what happened before to now be able to become the future.
Oh yeah, like you really get to appreciate what has happened before and what is happening now, and what the future is gonna look like, for the years to come.
Yep. So it's like, again, like that black and white style to me, I still, again, every time I see it, I'm like, oh, this is awesome, because it brings me back to the movies that I like, because I'm a movie buff. Like, I love old school movies, and I can watch it and be like, it doesn't need the color. It tells the story without needing for anything like that. Like, don't get me wrong. Now I feel like we're in that age of like everything has to be HD, 4K, this and that. But it's like,
I like the grittiness.
Exactly. Like, you took the word right out of my mouth. That's like, you want that gritty look to it. And especially wrestling, like, you're looking at people at like the weirdest moments at times, like in the midst of a bump or possibly getting choked out or just whatever. And it's like, do you really want like a 4K picture of this, or would you want that grittiness that like it looks like a fight?
It's like it has like that gnarliness to it.
Yeah. Like,
and it's also kind of funny because I made a joke with a friend that I've kind of really went in tune with my gritty, kind of raw aesthetic. That like someone's like, "Can you shoot a wedding?" I'm like, "I don't think I can," because your wedding's not gonna want to look like a freaking wrestling show. Like, you want that, like a wedding, you want like the 4K.
Yeah, that you want that, like, you want it to look magnificent. Wrestling, it's
like polished.
You kind of like. Like, even I feel like WWE now, like their photography, like I know now why. Like, I would hope you met him as well, Richard Wade. And he does.
I never met him, but I hear him in passing, and I hear he likes my stuff, and I really love his stuff. So hopefully we can get to meet one of these days.
Yeah, Rich is awesome. Rich does some great photography, and he has started working now a lot. So with WWE as well, and I see the style change, and I feel like, again, like you can adapt it. That doesn't need to be this like insane style. Like, you can make it so it's, again, you don't lose the art of wrestling. Because I feel like that's the thing too, that everyone wants it to be this fancy look, have the HD, the 4K. It's like, okay, that's cool, but it's like you're losing the wrestling side of it. Like, let the wrestling tell the story. Like,
exactly. I don't want it to become so uniform that, because a part of me kind of feels like there was sometimes I feel like I don't want to lose my aesthetic, and I kind of stay true to my roots, but then that polishedness, it works sometimes and not. It kind of depends on like what you're shooting, if it's backstage or fans and all of that. Like, one of my I was gonna say, like, one of my favorite photographs that I took recently, and I kind of joke, it's like my magnum opus. Like, I was like, I'm never gonna peak like this before. Is my portrait of Warhorse, where he's kind of a black and white. He's just doing, like, he's winking. He's like, all that, and that, I feel like that photo captures. That's like the peak of like my art form of like the gritty, and also it's Warhorse. So he already encapsulates that already, of like the grittiness, that old school wrestling type of nature. And that's what I kind of want to keep doing with my photographs, and trying to keep getting that perspective out of wrestling. And even now, with like traveling, this summer and fall, like Saturday I did a wrestling show in a barn, in a freaking like haystacks, and it was amazing. Because I was like, who's done wrestling in a barn? Like, this is some shit you hear about, like, in 1960s Midwest wrestling.
Yeah.
This was in Jersey, and it's kind of like, that's kind of like the most exciting thing about photographing all of this is I think what makes me stand out in a way is I kind of have like a documentary lens. That's what I studied in
Okay.
school, like documentary, um, in terms of like, documenting whatever story you're onto. But the wrestling kind of took a life of its own because this was supposed to be like a one-off high school assignment. I was going to just do that one show at Daro's when I found out about it and then see what happens. And now it's like 2 years later and here I am.
I feel like that's how it is. Like you can find wrestling at times. It's like, okay, cool. We'll see we'll try it out, see what happens, and then it's like you're sucked in, and it's like it's the best thing about indie wrestling because again, like that family feel at times, it just makes you want to come back, and you meet some great people, and you meet great friends.
Oh yeah.
And I feel like I wouldn't change it in an heartbeat. Like this business, it has its good, it has its bad, but it's like in the end, those little things are what keeps you wanting to come back and keeps you doing what you do. And I can imagine in those 2 years though, like it's definitely wants you to, it makes you want to come back, right? Like,
oh yeah, like I've definitely had my ups and downs in wrestling in my short time here, but I always say the most grateful thing that wrestling has given me besides, I say, it's given me a lot of, in terms of my career, it's given me a lot of opportunities, a lot of publications and stuff that I don't think would have been possible if I never started this work. But really the best thing I'm grateful for is the friends I've made. Like I think about Synergy, I rode up with MV Young and Isaac and, we're driving back, we're eating Taco Bell, we're listening to Tenacious D, and it's just like this sort of, that friendship that I don't think I would have had. I don't think we ever would have met if it wasn't for wrestling. And that's like the most grateful thing. Or even riding up on Saturday with my friends and we're just, laughing, joking around. I'm like, I'm just so grateful like wrestling brought us together. Like, despite all the ups and downs, I have you guys here and that's really what matters to me. Like even if let's say I stop doing wrestling photography and I focus on something else long term, that doesn't mean my friendship with everyone like disappears. It's just, I know that that's always going to be stagnant and forever, and that's like really something I'm really grateful for.
Yeah.
Like I really say like wrestling gave me my best friends.
Aww. No, it really does that. It really like, I feel like no matter what, I've seen friends come into wrestling, I've seen friends leave, and I feel like those relationships are the realest thing about wrestling. Because there's a lot, again, like we said, there's good, there's bad, but the biggest good thing out of wrestling is those friendships. I've made some great friends. Like I mentioned earlier, a friend that now he's like a brother to me. Okay, like again, it started with a joke bond about us both being Ecuadorian, but now it's like I've had those moments where we've had those conversations. When I saw him Saturday, it's like, okay, cool, what's up, hermano? It's been like, especially now with quarantine, it makes you value that. Like this whole pandemic has made you value like, okay, these little moments, getting to be with these people that again, who would have known if we would have ever met beforehand, now makes you see, you know what? I gotta enjoy it while it's here. Like
exactly, like 100%. It really makes you and right when the quarantine hit, I feel like I was just getting really, really close with my friends. Like we were starting to hang out more and such. And then when quarantine hit, I was like, oh my God, wait, I miss you guys. We were just really bonding. We were making plans. We were going to do this. So when the phases started opening up and it was like kind of safe to see friends and go out a little bit and, be cautious with it and getting tested, I was like, I need to see all of my friends immediately. Also, I'm an extrovert. So I was like the most suffering because all my friends are introverts. So they were like, oh, it sucks. Well, we got this. Meanwhile, I'm here like, I'm going insane.
See,
I was like,
this pandemic definitely showed me I'm an omnivert. Because I can be good, but it's like, once I'm getting in that groove of talking to friends and this and that, I'm like, okay, we got to go do something. Like, when I saw people Saturday, I'm like, hey, like, it's like nothing changed. Like, especially when I saw you guys, like, I saw Envy. I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. I'm like, hey, wait. I know those guys. And it's like, again, you just start conversating.
The
And it's
production
like,
team.
I think,
Isaac and
oh,
I.
man. That's just going to be our crew now. We're just going to have Hoke, you, me, Isaac. It's just a production team now. That's it.
I know.
That's
we really are. Like, you know, we really, well, Isaac's half Colombian. He's almost Ecuadorian. We'll give him
the bridge pass. Like, it'll be like, okay.
We share the same colors on our flag.
Oh.
We'll keep that. We'll, you know, aren't Colombians or Incas too? We come from the same ancestor.
Touche. But no, Isaac is definitely the homie. He'll definitely be coming on soon. We spoke Saturday about that, and it's like, again, that's a friendship. Again, I wouldn't have had without wrestling, and it's insane. I met Isaac at that House of Glory show. Neither of us worked there yet. We were both just fans watching the show. And months later, he starts working there. And a few months after that, I get a chance to get interviewed. Who am I recommended by? Isaac. And it's like, boom.
How you do
and
it?
It's like, it's crazy to think that this business definitely does. If it's meant for you, it will happen. Like, I look at it like that. Like, but especially the opportunities outside of it also brings, like, especially for you, there's this thing I'm going to put up now. I'm going to do the segue perfectly here. Photoville. Like, you got to showcase wrestling in another light. And can you just tell us a little bit about that, though? Like, I have, your name is there. I could see, like, a nice image there. Again, that black and white, which I'm loving. Can you tell us a little bit, what is Photoville? Like, what is the...
Sure. Yeah. So Photoville is a photo festival that usually runs, I think it's been going for 10 years now. And it usually runs in Dumbo, in sort of like, they kind of take right near, I always say it's right near Luke's Lobsters at Dumbo. And it's a festival. They have panels of photographers. They have over 60 exhibitions from, you know, globally. Like, it's a lot of New Yorkers, but it's also from across the whole world, from South America, Africa, all the continents and such. And it's really like a magnificent event. Like, I went last year for the first time, and I saw beautiful work ranging from about Spanish Harlem in the 80s to the immigration crisis happening in Venezuela and involving Ecuador as well. The photos about the House of Representatives. Like, it's really a photo festival. And, you know, I was always told about it. Oh, Sofie, you have to visit, or Sofie, you have to try and apply. And I was like, okay, I'm going to make that a goal of mine. But in all, like, sincerity and honesty, I was really, like, 5 years down the road. Like, I'm thinking, you know, I'm 21, I'm turning 22 soon in November. So I'm like, all right, 25, 26, I want to have a Photoville exhibition. You know, 25, I want to have a solo show. You know, because in my head, I'm like, I'll be done by school by then, hopefully. I have a job, I moved out. I'm like, then I'll have a solo show, I have all my shit together. And when the pandemic hit, Photoville was still running, but they were like, oh, we're going to do it more across the boroughs. And I was like, all right, let me shoot my shot. Let me see what happens. And I submitted the wrestling. I submitted the wrestling to multiple places. And other work of mine has been exhibited before, like in group exhibitions or panel talks. But it's really my work actually about Ecuador. I did a project called Ecuadorianos en el Bronx, about my family, and then kind of talking about the immigration of Ecuadorians in New York. And I'm still working. That took a little hiatus because wrestling then like shot up. But then I gave wrestling a shot, and then Photoville said, yeah, we love it. You're getting your own thing. And I was like, what? I remember getting the news. I just started screaming in the car. I was like, what? Because I also was kind of feeling like, you know, you also have to understand that a lot of these projects can be very intimate and personal and very deep. And, you know, they could be talking about trauma or, you know, histories of this and heavy subjects. And then I kind of feel like, here's wrestling. Like, I kind of got scared. People would be like, you know, oh, how are we supposed to portray these these important stories, and then I'm just here like, you guys like wrestling? Like you guys
like I said
this?
earlier, I feel like wrestling does tell that story. And I feel like I've gone to a lot of exhibits because I love, again, like it's weird the little things I don't speak about, especially on here, because I'm like, not that many people agree with it. So I love the storytelling that photography can do as well. And I feel like wrestling's the perfect thing for it because it tells the perfect story of good versus evil. And I feel like anyone that loves photography or loves images, like I love abstract art. And I feel like wrestling, even though it's a clear picture, it's the biggest abstract art that there is. Because you don't, unless you're there, you don't know what's actually happening. You don't know what's happening there, what's the story there. So it's the biggest abstract. So I feel like any like photo critic can look at it and be like, and just start thinking about it. So I get it. I get it. Like the worry is always going to be there because I feel like we're always going to be our biggest critic. We're always going to be like, oh, this isn't good enough yet. Or like, so it's like, I can get that. But wrestling, especially, like I said, your artwork, what you do, it's like, oh, of course it'll get picked. Like.
No, it was really a genuine shock. And because also I think when I started this project, I was surrounded by a lot of like academia and mentorship, and a lot of them were supportive. Like a lot of my mentors in photography, I'll name drop them real quick: Nestor, Abigail, Roy, Issa. They really pushed me because they knew they saw something. But also the arts is also Professor Towery, shout out to her. Also the arts has a lot of haters, so to say, where they kind of have this kind of normative idea of what photography should be. And I was going to say, sports photography gets shitted on, like in high fine art photography. Now, I don't consider myself a sports photographer. I really consider myself a photographer, documentary photographer. But because it was wrestling, people were like, "Oh, well, that's sports. That's ice."
That's funny. Like, that is the only way it gets defined as a sport. To think wrestling is always rated.
Only I pitch it as entertainment. I sometimes pitch it as theater. It's drama, which it is. But because they're still fighting, it kind of falls into this rabbit hole of sports photography, which I've seen some incredible sports photography. No. But it's kind of like it's gotten a lot of backlash isn't the word I'd use, but it has gotten its fair share of harsh critiques. Yeah. So I was kind of scared that was going to happen. But the people at Photoville, especially Laura, one of the co-founders, she told me she saw it. She's like, this is amazing. And I was like, Laura, like, I get very emotional. Aww. Because, I actually was going to say, I almost gave up doing wrestling photography because I had this one teacher who really like rubbed this through the mud, like who really made me want to stop doing it because it was like I would come to class every day with like 40, 50 images, and then she'll just say only one is good. And it wasn't even like in the tough love way, it was just like in a very nasty way. And I almost kind of gave up wrestling photography because I was just like, damn, like, it's just gonna get shitted on. But then I saw Darius Carter versus Sue Young in Parkchester, and I was like, this is the greatest fucking thing ever. And then I was like, wait, I love this. I love photographing this. This is freaking gnarly. No one else is really capturing it. And I feel like, there's always that thing of like, I think Robert Downey Jr. said it, where it was like, the best advice is to take no advice. And I sometimes believe in that. It has its, it kind of depending on the situation, but I really just kind of stuck to my gut with the project. Yeah, and
I feel like with wrestling itself, like it's that thing of like sometimes you have to like feel your gut. Whatever your gut tells you, you have to go with sometimes because there's gonna be people that don't have your vision. They don't see why it's important. They don't see why this can be something. They only see it as, oh, no, you know what? No, I don't like it. Like, but you're not me. You don't see why
Exactly.
this is something. And I feel like wrestling itself is the biggest thing. There's always going to be the harsh critiques of, oh, it's that fake stuff. Or how could you watch that? How could
Yeah.
you? And again, wrestling is the biggest form of art out there. It has media. It
Oh,
has entertainment. It has theater. It has a bunch of photography in it.
it has so much art into it, and it also, being around it so much really makes me appreciate it more. It really makes me appreciate everything that they're doing. I actually remember, I think in my fourth wrestling show in, which I'm still still a newbie. I still kind of hold some kind of ideas of wrestling's fake and all of that, because that's what you're
Yeah.
told, growing up. And I think I said that as like as a joke, kind of. I was sitting. It was a all woman show, and I kind of said that. Well, wrestling's fake. And Brandy Lauren was there, and she was like, "Well, if it was fake, I wouldn't get hurt." And that shut me up. I said, "You're right." She put me
No,
up.
yeah,
She
and
loved
it's how I like to explain it. Like, it's like, I get it. There's parts of it that you can see the replace of real combat, but the actual physical atmosphere of wrestling, it's really real. Like, you were there Saturday,
yeah.
you saw me get chopped. I got chopped multiple times on Saturday,
I saw the Warhorse one. I was like, "Oh my god!"
and it's like I'm still feeling it, and it's Tuesday, so it's like
No,
it's like, no, like, I get it. There is gonna be those elements that aren't as real. There are gonna be fictitious part of it, but the combat is in there. You feel the pain. You feel,
definitely,
and I
yeah.
get it. There's always gonna be those naysayers like, oh no, that's all fake. It's all scripted. It's like, okay, you go try it.
You take a chop.
Like,
That's what you. Yeah.
like, but no,
No, I think that was kind of like, and then also like the privilege of being backstage, and you hear people call their matches. It's just interesting to see it, like, and then they're speaking. It's like they're speaking another language, like, oh, false finish, cut off, heat, and I'm just like, okay, like, it's just a very interesting and dynamic thing to witness. And also, I always say it is a privilege to be in those spaces, because I also kind of feel like, as a girl, as a young woman, being backstage, it's always weird, because they're like, "What's up?" And I'm like, "I'm just photographing, guys." And I never felt really awkward in a locker room before, because they've been very welcoming. But it's just interesting, because I look back in like history of like wrestling photography, and I don't see like as a young woman, I was like, oh, we never had that much access before, because I also just think it also leads down to like history photography and like roles that were accessible for women, especially women of color, Latinx women. And wrestling, I've seen a lot of diversity, and giving me the opportunity to sort of like get a piece of that as well.
No, you're definitely like, and again, this is not just to put you over because you're on the show, but you are breaking barriers here, because not only are you of Hispanic heritage, you're Latinx, being a woman as well, getting this main role here. It's like, it's a lot of barriers that wouldn't have been available years ago. Like, this is, and I'm not even saying, I wouldn't even just go past decades or it's like recently. This isn't like something that's like, oh man, yeah, we could have gotten this years ago. It's like, no, like, this is something that wrestling is finally starting little by little to finally adapt and see, hey, like, we have to be diverse, because there's going to be people of all ethnicities, of all genders, of all races that can do amazing jobs. And like, wrestling, again, like, I feel like is that perfect like melting pot that's like anything goes. Like, as long as you're a good person, hey, come in. Like,
yeah, like, that's really, and like having those opportunities, and I can speak from the media perspective because I'm not a wrestler, but yeah, it's you're opening doors, you're breaking barriers. I also kind of feel like growing up, I was always fascinated with the photography in subcultures. So specifically like concerts, skateboarding, roller derby, like all types of like the concept of travel was very big. but it was kind of really male dominated, and in a way it kind of made sense, because I was like, what Ecuadorian parents are going to let their 16-year-old daughter go travel with wrestlers or a band? You know what I'm saying? Like, and even to this day, my parents, I'm the oldest of 4, I'm 21, but I'm still the Latin older daughter, the firstborn. And there is kind of like these barriers that I'm breaking pursuing wrestling, because I have a little old school parents and grandparents who are like, what do you mean you're traveling with wrestlers to like another state for 3 days? And I'm like, that's what I'm doing.
No.
And I really feel like, I don't want to say I'm the first, because I really believe there have been more before me, but I want to say that I've been trying to bring it more to the forefront, because I know a lot of young girls in photography who want to do what I want to do. And of course, I'm like the mother who's like, do it, I will protect you, I'll go with you. Like, I want them to have that experience as well, that I kind of feel like I'm trying to make through as well.
See, again, like, and this is, again, to put you over here, as a young person still in this, you have the perfect mindset of wanting to pay it forward. And I love that. Like, and it's funny because, again, like, as well, the Ecuadorian side is like, it's still at times like I'll get an earful about, oh, but why are you going to do this and this and this? And it's like, it's nurturing though, because it's like, okay, you know what? I know that I'm doing the right thing here. I'm doing something that I'm passionate about. And wrestling is the hardest thing to explain, especially to our culture, because it's known. People love it in Ecuador as well. But it's still like, it's hard to explain. Yeah, it's a job. It really is something that you can do at this level. It's not just WWE or this and that. And I feel like the biggest way how I got my, like, even my own mom to finally see how it is was taking her to a few of these shows. And she got to feel it and see, like, you know what? Okay. After I think it was like the 4th show, she's like, okay, have fun. Like, and that's how it is. Like, wrestling gives you that. It gives you that platform that's like, you know what? Sometimes it's going to be that little bit of a conversation, but it's good to be able to then, for the next person, be like, hey, I went through that. Here's my story. Let me help you out.
Oh, yeah. I've seen, and I know a lot of wrestlers who tell me their story of, like, they had a similar struggle and stuff, so they want to pay it forward. And I think that's, like, the best thing to do is to pay it forward. Like, I'm not going to gatekeep photography and wrestling. Like, who the hell does that? Like, I want to, whoever wants to get their foot into the door, I'm going to try my best and do that. I'm going to tell them what I learned, what I wish I knew earlier, and all that good stuff. And also, there's a lot of photographers who I've met who've given me, who treated me with, like, extreme kindness. Like, I really feel like right after I had kind of wanted to branch out from the wrestling in New York or Bronx, I really wanted to, like, because a lot of people were saying to me, like, Sophie, you're really good, you should start trying to do other places. And I, and my insecurities were like, well, I'm not that good. I was like, I don't know if I'm that good. I was like, I don't know if, like, GCW or Beyond want to take me. And then I hit up GCW's photographers saying, hey guys, like, I'm a photographer from the Bronx, this is my portfolio. And they were just like, yo, come on. Because they told me, they were like, we're getting old. They're like, we want the new generation to come in.
And that's how it is. Like,
people
this is the sad factor is wrestling is there, but it's also always going to have that element of the new need to come in. Like, that's why you always see it in wrestlers. Like, they pay it forward by giving that knowledge, telling you, oh, this is how you should do this is that. So it's that factor of, like, I feel like this is the only business that people would love to teach so that the next generation's ready. Because in everything else, it's like you don't want to share your secrets because you don't want to get replaced. But in wrestling, I feel like you hear it the most. That's like, this person will be like, oh, you should do it this way and that way, and then you're good. Like,
yeah, like, they'll tell you everything that you need to know, or pay it forward, because I think they really just want to have the next generation thrive, and if they can leave their impact or imprint on the next generation by giving so and so an opportunity, or that, like you said, that blurb of knowledge, it does so much in the long run. I think that's why wrestling is always going to be happening, because there's so many factions, there's so many promotions, there's so many opportunities, and there's so many wonderful stories. I mean, just what I've covered has, it's just like a scratch of the whole iceberg of beautiful stories you hear because of wrestling, and it's awesome. Like, it's really like, it's awesome.
No, it really is. And again, like I always encourage people, check out your local independents. Like, get just a feel of it, because we don't just say these stories because it's because we like it. Like, no, there is something there in indie wrestling and just wrestling itself, because it gives those opportunities that you'd never know if you don't try. Like,
yeah, you figure it out, and you learn, and yeah, it's really awesome.
No, it really is. It really is. Like, I'll share one little story about that, like how much paying it forward really matters. Is my first year in, like, I'm still new. I'm a rookie at this. I'm doing social media, and I'm like, okay, I think I got a sense of storytelling. And someone who owes me nothing, he barely knows me, a veteran in this homicide, messages me. I'm like, no, this is fake. And I'm like, no way. Like, how's it going? And he's like, hey, so I just want to teach you a little bit more about storytelling, because you have the right track, but you have to like fix this and that. I'm like, okay. And from there, I grew this bond, because he wanted to teach me the right way, because I was still young in it. And I feel like from there, I've always tried to share knowledge with people, like, do it like this, do it like that, and it'll work out for you. And it's always great to see. And again, we're in this business that it can always be the best thing to help someone next. But someone else that I feel like, again, we have this bond with, who's also killing it in what he's doing, and he's paid it forward just with what he does for content. He's paying it forward that guys are getting seen around the world. Let's talk a little bit about our friend Hoke here. I'm putting out a nice photo right there on the video. They're seeing Hoke, and that has to be, again, some
humblest dude ever, like, in this bit.
He's too humble for his own good, I feel like.
He's like the most humble. I've only known him like a year almost. Yeah. I think recently we've gotten much closer, because we've been talking more, we've been booked on the same shows. I love this dude. He's always just had a very protective nature of everyone. And, starting out, I would ask him questions. I didn't know what the horseshoe was, or the gorilla, or all these, like, technical terms. I'm like, what the fuck is that? Like, all of this stuff. And he was, he'd always be like, he'll laugh, but he was always so open and, like, teaching me and helping me out, and all of that. And I think he just knows. I think, he also is, like, seeing the ups and downs of wrestling. And he's like, I think we also feel like, let's try to make wrestling let's try to eliminate all the bad stuff, or the ups, the downs of it. Let's try to make this a more positive experience for the current generation and the new generation. And, love that dude. The most humblest guy ever. Like, too humble for me.
He really is.
If you're watching this, you're so, like, he's so humble. So, I have nothing bad to say about him. He's like, and also he gave me, like, a little, like, and also, like, advice as well. Like, gave me some advice in terms of, like, how to work within medium wrestling. I always used to joke with him. I was like, you get paid? I don't know if you ever saw that, there's, like, that freaking movie where it's like, you're gonna get paid $10,000, I was gonna get paid $500. It's like, you guys are getting paid. Like,
I know exactly what movie and the meme that's been made, and it's like, I can't remember the name of the movie right now. I'll edit it in later on, because I'm not gonna.
I think it's the RV.
It's something where oh man, I can't remember the movie.
Yeah, we'll find it, but it's like,
but yeah,
I joke, like, oh,
indie wrestling is definitely like that. It's like, wait, so you're getting paid?
Like, you guys get paid? Yeah, and and then he told me, like he helped me out, figure out a rate, figure out some stuff. I took his advice, and also he put me over. He was trained. He also wanted me to, like, branch out as well, because, he was one of those many people who were like, Sophie, you really have the chops to like branch out there. And he really just like, you know, he just wants everyone to succeed. Like, and honestly, like I'm about that too. So, he gave me opportunity. I want to put it forward. That's like, and I just, you keep that chain of like happiness going.
Oh yeah, of course.
Of, like, putting it forward. And then it's awesome because then you get surrounded with more passionate and awesome people who are like, we love this. We love sharing the funny moments, bonding and all such. So that's like one of the fun things about it. And yeah, he's great. Like, I have a heart.
Oh man, no, okay, like that's an hermano. That's a dude that again, like we all started very differently here, but again, good people connect, and I feel like it's something that we are that next generation that's like we rather have people like-minded like us, like have that positive atmosphere, have that vibe that's like, you know what, we're gonna be the reason why wrestling succeeds another decade or another 2 decades. Yeah. Like we want to be that reason it continues forward. And again, Hoge too humble for his own good. I spoke to him Saturday. I'm like, hey, I know you don't like doing podcasts and stuff, but would you want to come on? And he's like, of course, because you're the hermano. I'm like, okay, thank you. Like, again,
we're gonna have the Ecuadorian series.
Hey, no, but that's the funny thing, because I'm like, again, I want to have people, especially on the Roundtable, that I truly do support. They are my friends, and it's something that I even told them it's not a podcast-esque, because I don't call it a podcast, because I don't want to be the interviewer type that's like, so why this and this and that? Like, no, yeah. I'd rather just conversate, because it's what I would do if we were just talking at a show. Or if we're just hanging out. Definitely. Like, it feels more natural and it comes off better that's like, okay, this is why people are going to want to watch. Because they feel like, okay, I'm like that fly on the wall if they were talking. Like, yeah. And again, this is what I bring to this atmosphere here. And especially now with Hispanic Heritage Month, I really wanted to showcase those that I feel like are killing it in our community. Like,
yeah, like the Latinx community, and also like we just make up such a big chunk of like lucha libre and its history, and this new generation of it happening is just like awesome, because we all started as fans, and then we never really expected that we'll be a part of the industry.
Definitely.
And part of the
definitely. And I feel like that's the thing too, like you even just nailed it right there, how in lucha libre it is a cultural thing. Like everyone knows lucha libre, but I always say that what messes with us a little bit is we aren't seen as big and prominent in American wrestling or professional wrestling, I should say, till now. Mm-hmm. Now you finally see it, like guys like Santana and Ortiz, guys like Ray Horace, guys like Angel Garza, Andrade, getting to showcase on bigger platforms now. And it's like, boom. Like you get to see our culture on a prominent stage. Like even Sammy Guevara, guys that, again, have those Latin roots. And I'm leaving so many out and I feel bad. But it's like, there again, it's just great to see.
There's just so many now that we're forgetting. That's good that we're forgetting, because so many now. Like for me, I'm a different generation, but for me, my first kind of taste of representation in media and wrestling was AJ Lee. Like I freaking love AJ Lee. Everyone before me was kind of like Lita, and I love Lita too, but AJ Lee's my girl. Like she was kind of like that like who I saw myself. I mean, I'm Ecuadorian, but she was Puerto Rican, but she was the brown girl with the black hair.
Exactly. Like
she was Punk. She was dating CM Punk. I was like, and as a teenage girl, I'm like, yeah, like and actually, I was gonna say, I've told a few people this. I did want to be a wrestler when I was younger. When I was 16, okay. I feel like we all
if especially like if you had any like interest in wrestling, if you ever watched wrestling, you're like, I want to do that.
Yeah, and I kind of remember like in 2014, 2014 I was 15 going on 16, and I was I was in Ecuador actually. I was in Ecuador for the summer, and I was watching a shit ton of WWE. My crush for Dean Ambrose was blossoming with every day, And I was like, oh, maybe I want to like be a wrestler. And in my head, I came up with like this gimmick, which was basically a ripoff of AJ Lee. But I remember my theme song was gonna be "Hot Mess" by Cobra Starship, or so. And then all my moves were gonna be like Rey Mysterio's. And I just kind of, I really thought about it. I was like, oh, that'll be cool. But again, I think what really held me back was I thought it existed in the Midwest.
You're like, I can't get to Ohio. How am I going to get to Ohio? Yeah. Meanwhile, you're halfway across the country, but you can't get to Ohio.
All of your parents, I thought it existed in Ohio. like I thought, like, wrestling school for independence, I would have to have gone. It was like, I didn't know Hog existed. I didn't know BWF existed. Like, I didn't know any of that existed. And I think, I think back, like, if I knew then, would I have gone for it? Probably. Maybe I would have, by now, I would have become a wrestler or something. I just kind of had this fixation with it, fascination with it. And I think that's kind of, I do say, though, this is like my favorite icebreaker with wrestlers, and I get to know them more like at shows and stuff, is I tell them I broke my arm because of wrestling. So then they think I'm a wrestler. I'm like, no, I was watching Mucha Lucha on Cartoon Network, and I wanted to recreate the moves, and I broke my arm. And I was like, that's how wrestling left its mark on me, because of Mucha Lucha, a classic on Cartoon Network. The theme song is still great, like that, And that was like another exposure to wrestling too. Shout out to Mucha. Yeah, I don't think that gets enough appreciation.
No, I don't think it does. Like I remember I still had the VHS tape of that. Again, showing a little bit of our age there. Yeah. But yeah, that was wow. Well then, who would have known? Maybe Sofie could have been the next wrestler there.
I could have been the first Ecuadorian female wrestler, y'all, if I if I knew Hog existed or BWF, I probably would have. I really, honest to God, thought it existed in Ohio.
Hey, like I said, I feel like if it's meant to be, it would have happened, and maybe this was the calling, the photography, and look at what it's gotten you, where it goes, and who knows? One day, maybe you'll get to take a picture of me when I'm wrestling. I guess we'll have to.
I know. It'd be like full circle moment.
We'll bring it back to this.
And that would be great, because it'll be, that'd be awesome if I photograph you when you begin wrestling and stuff, like, that's, because that'd be great, because it's kind of like, all right, this is his new chapter in his life, and that's like the best part about it. Like, I've met, I think I met one girl, forget her name. Her name was Kaya or Kaya. I met her at Titan. And I took a Polaroid of her, and she's like, oh my God, she's like, this is my first wrestling show. And I was like, oh my God, like, in terms of like her being a wrestler, because she had been working in like media, she was a manager. She's like, oh no, she's like, I'm wrestling. And I was like, oh my God.
And again, it's those moments so you get to say you were there, you're a part of it, and it has to
exactly
like. And again, the images she's taken, like, I'm gonna show another one here of a great friend of mine, Mr. Anthony Gangone. And again, like, Gangone itself, he's already very abstract. Like, you never know what's happening in his images, but just his picture here, like, even the shirt, it's to consume, don't think. And it's like, it's insane. Like, those little things you get to capture, and the story you tell, you never know. It's up to the person that watches or sees it, I should say.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. And Gangone, I'm actually getting to know like recently, because I had photographed him in passing, but I never really got to meet him. And then recently, I started talking to him more. He's a funny guy. I love the dude.
Oh yeah, that's like, that's my brother right there. There's a reason why, like, this is always gonna be our reason. Like, we'll always talk and always be great friends. I don't know if you knew this, I have the tattoo on my arm of him. Like, I have his logo on my arm. Like,
oh wow,
that's. I always say he'll be a best friend of mine.
Right there.
It's like, it's really is, and every time I see like images like that, I'm like, he's something in wrestling you don't see either. Like, he knows how to tell that story, and a little slight image like that, it's like, okay, you don't know, like, just the shirt itself, it's like, wait,
going on, yeah. It's like a piece. You get a piece of him, like right. Yeah, he's so funny. I love his synergy when he did the spear. He's like, on this day.
The little callback there. What's funny is that everyone's gonna call the straight thing to Edge because they're like, okay, it's based off the theme, and oddly enough, it's a Mike Bennett thing.
Oh,
Mike
really?
Bennett used to do it on the Indies, and again, it was because of Edge. But Mike Bennett used to do it on the Indies. He would just every time he was gonna hit a spear, start singing the Edge theme, and
dang.
And hey, it works. It works.
It works. Yeah.
Like, but
photographing him is fun. I took a few great shots of him. And he was telling me, he's like, he really likes my stuff because he's like you appreciate it. He knows I appreciate it. Like I don't just like kind of edit and I just throw it. I take my time with each photograph. I also make sure how's the wrestler looking in all the photographs. Yeah. I also know, it's content at the end of the day. I know it's for Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. And I want to be there to like document them and also give them their best shots because I want them to like, especially if they're going to be sharing it, gives me, it's what represents my artwork. Yeah. I want to have that, be like known and accessible in like all forms of social media.
No, and that's great though that you do put the time there, and I feel like it's something that a lot of people just think, oh, she takes pictures and that's it. It's like, no, there's a lot more that goes in. Trust me, like we spoke earlier, and it's like she's working on a lot of projects, and it's like, hey, that's why I kept asking. I'm like, whatever works for you, because especially I respect it. I know it's a lot of time that goes into this. Like photography is something that, again, it's not just anyone can grab a camera. Like I said earlier, I take shitty pictures. I can edit a video together. Like after this, I'll have to do all the editing to this, fix it up, color coordinate just to make sure we're good, check the sound. But tell me to take a picture, it's going to be probably either slanted or it's going to be some out of focus or just some stupid shit.
It's definitely... I mean, I tell you, it's a different set of skills. I sometimes, and it's also become, the camera has become an extension of myself in terms of, I mean, the camera that I shoot, I'm not a person who's like, what gear are you using and type. Though I do believe, I do believe the camera doesn't define you, but it helps elevate the skills you already have. Yeah. And the camera that I've been using was the one I got as a high school graduation gift.
Aww.
I got that as in 2016, about 4 years ago now. She's definitely seen better days. She's gone through mosh pits and everything you can name it. And that camera has become such an extension that like sometimes I just kind of like extend it and I just shoot without really looking in the viewfinder because I kind of know it's weird. Yeah. Like it's
second nature to you now. Like now you know. Yeah. It's like it's you. It's the camera is. It's you now. Like you can get
There's a video of me photographing my friend, and he's jumping midair, and he's kicking someone. And if you watch the video, I'm looking at him, and I'm kind of laughing because he looks funny. And I just have my camera, and I'm just like, I'm looking at it, and I'm just like, ooh. And then my friend was like, oh my god, like, how did that photo come out? You weren't even looking. And then it's all great and shit because I was like, it's a third eye, like it's some type of like extension of myself of. Part of me is kind of scared though of like switching cameras because I'm like, oh man, am I gonna lose it if I but I have been pushing myself to, especially in wrestling, been experimenting with like so many different types of photography, like in terms of film, 4x5, cyanotypes, and like printing and stuff. I've been really getting creative with it because I really want to, I think at the end of the day, especially with my artwork, in terms of like getting creative with it, it's it's my way of giving wrestling a different creative outlet. Just like a different form of art within the art.
And it's very like interesting to see the different style. Like again, you bring a totally different style. I see, and I love like the classic cameras you have at times, like little stuff that you can play around with, and it's to me again like the black and white is amazing. The ideas of the Polaroids being brought back, it's like okay, it's fun to see.
Yeah,
and it's again.
I have to give a shout out to Michael Watson of Brainbuster. He's an Iowa photographer because he just released 2 books called The Wrestlers and The Wrestlers 2, which is Polaroids the original Polaroids.
Okay, yeah, I've seen the book. A friend of mine, Brad, has it, and he's been going around getting the autographs of it, and it's a great style. Like, I feel like the Polaroid, to me, for some reason, it fits wrestling. It really fits wrestling, and again, you're bringing that style to at least our area of the indie wrestling world, and it looks great.
But, yeah, because Brain Buster, I consider him like a mentor in photography and especially wrestling photography. Like when I told him I'm doing GCW, and I was scared because all of the wrestling I had done before, a friend was booked or someone I knew was booked, but this was really me, like little fish going to the ocean now. And I was like, man, like I don't know anyone there, and am I gonna get intimidated? But Brainbuster was like, no, he's like, I got some friends there, I'll tell them about you. And then I got there, like, you're Sofie, and I'm like, I'm Sofie. Like, it was such a great community. And the Polaroid work, that's kind of like my thing of like, well, the East Coast and the Northeast wrestling hasn't gotten that type of exposure and recognition in that kind of art form, because I kind of feel like, I have a lot of friends who are wrestlers, and they kind of tell me like, the Northeast scene doesn't get that much, I don't want to say respect, but I guess recognition as well. I feel like that's what I've heard through the grapevine, through conversations, that especially like New York, like a lot of people are like, oh, the New York scene, or with the new generation, like, who is there? And I'm like, there's so many great people.
I feel like it definitely, like, I can agree with that sentiment. That's like, New York was indie wrestling. Everyone talks about like the Amazing Reds, the Homicides, the Low Keys, but it's like there's a lot of great talent now, and
the students,
like, we don't get the proper respect yet, but it's definitely coming. Little by little, people are starting to see again that New York, and I should even say the tri-state. I'll put it as the tri-state, because Jersey as well. Yeah. It's blooming with independent wrestling again. Like,
Jersey is blooming with even like Invictus, which I shot Sunday. That's a new promotion, and it was in a barn, and it was awesome.
Yeah, I had a few friends that wrestled on that show, and again, like, you never know where you could find some hidden gems in wrestling. Like, there are matches that you're never gonna know possibly happened if you don't go check it out. Like, independent wrestling could happen. It's happened in crazier places. It happened at barns, at the bar, at
beaches.
Oh man, yeah, there was like, wherever you can imagine. Like, I've seen, like, it used to be backyard wrestling where at parks. There's been actual shows now at a park.
Exactly, and I think that, so, especially like with the pandemic and how I'm always very sensitive to the pandemic, because I take it seriously. When I started traveling for this, I live with my grandparents. I live with, a lot of family members. And so I take the proper precautions of like staying safe and getting checked and all of that, when I want to continue to do this, because, there was so many opportunities, like, with Atlantic City, which is awesome, Pittsburgh, with the Polyam cult shows, which are my favorite thing. Shout out to MV Young and Uncanny Attractions, because the Polyam culture, the backyard one, I think was magical. It got a lot of shit because wasn't that great.
Yeah.
And it wasn't MV's fault. Like, everyone knows it, but like, I think it was great, because I was like, when you think of a backyard show, you're thinking Long Island, rural Queens. But this was like in Brooklyn. This was in a little Brooklyn apartment, and and of course they follow protocol and all the safety stuff, but it was amazing. Like, it was amazing. And I was like, man, photographing this was iconic, because I don't know if I'm going to see anything like that again. I don't know if they're going to be able to do that, because, let's say when the pandemic dies down and hopefully we return to some sense of normalcy in this industry, and we're going back to venues, I kind of feel like I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to go back to like a venue. I want to do the crazy shit. I want to go to a barn. I want to go to a beach. I want to go. Pittsburgh was amazing. What MV did to transform that backyard into the Polyam cult mansion, which I think that's magical. Like, I was like, this is so cool. I don't want to go back to photographing in basketball gyms or churches. I mean, maybe churches, but like churches were cool. It was kind of cool photographing wrestlers with like Jesus in the background. That was kind of cool to play with. But yeah, I really just like, it's really a new era of innovation and necessary innovation to survive.
No, and that's what it really was. That's what it really was that creativity was at its highest because of this. Because people wanted to find that way to entertain, and I feel like luckily, again, guys like MV made it happen. Like, I always laugh because when I think backyard shows, I'm thinking there's not going to even be a ring, and there was a ring. There would be the little like hints at it was a shitty ring, but it's like, hey, when you think backyard, I was thinking maybe there'll be a mat or two, if that. And he pulled out a whole ring, and it worked. And it didn't look like just a shindy. It had a full production. It was on Twitch. It's now, I believe, on YouTube. One of them is on YouTube. I know that. Yeah. And hey, like, innovation was at its highest during this, and it's still there because we have to be real here. We're not at the end of this, sadly. The pandemic is still at a high, and safely, we've been doing some great things. Like, look at Saturday. Saturday, we got to be at Synergy. It took its precaution, but it was an amazing show. And top to bottom, people got to be entertained. People got to entertain. And, again, wrestling can still thrive doing it safely.
Yeah, I loved it in Synergy when the ref, I didn't get his name, but he's, like, wiping it down. It was like,
oh, yeah, ref Ryan. Ryan T, and he definitely, like, he's been a super ref, I'll say, during this, because he's definitely made sure those ropes are clean, the ring is clean. Because end of the day, we want to make sure everyone's safe. The wrestlers have to be safe, because if not, they're gone. There's no way for them to be wrestling while that's going on. If they get infected, it's like the risk of possibly more people getting infected, and that's the last thing anyone wants. So it was great to see something like that.
No, definitely. It was really just like, I think it was like my first like indoor show also. So that was kind of really fun to see. Same thing with Invictus. Like, it was the barn thing, and it was great. It's just really, it really makes me happy to see wrestling innovate, and also getting to see my friends booked again, because I know that my friends were like, oh my God, we miss it. I mean, they were also like, there's more things to life, but they're like, this is my life as well.
No, wrestling has become it's become a big part of a lot of us now. Like, wrestling in general is like, this is what we do it's our second nature now. It's like, we do this, then we go to wrestling, or we go wrestle, or we go train, or we go, like, wrestling is now life.
Yeah.
And, like, it's insane.
Well, no, wrestling's awesome. It's definitely changed my life. I mean, it's given me so many life-changing experiences that I've kind of lost count of. Like, I think the biggest gift next to friendships that wrestling has given me has been the traveling. Because I kind of think back to like what I said earlier of like, I didn't see a lot of Latin girls doing this type of lifestyle, road trips, touring, mainly because I think, I guess we kind of talk about it since we were talking about like Latinx Heritage Month and like trying to break barriers. There is these certain standards or like household rules in Latin family. It's always the ongoing joke of like when you date a Latina and then like her parents are calling every 5 seconds, and you can ask all my exes that is true, because they will do that with like, they will call every 5 seconds. Where are you? Who are you with? Da da da. Like, it is coming from a sense of protection, definitely. But it is very helicopter parent. And and I tell my parents, I say, I have a job right now. I'm working remotely. I'm saving money and such. I took a break from school this semester because I really couldn't do school on Zoom. I really couldn't as a studio art student and pay for it. It just didn't feel reasonable. And I took a semester off, and I really thought to myself, I said, wow, I have time to travel and I have opportunities. And wrestling was kind of like, you want to go to Pittsburgh? You want to go to Atlantic City? You want to go to Connecticut? And I'm like, hell yeah. Like, I was like, of course, like that's why I kind of have like this desire, hopefully when Rona calms down and traveling a bit further is more possible. It's like I want to do that because I never was able to do that before. Like I've done road trips before, but with my family, and that's different, But here I was like, it's like, it was also like a rite of passage for adulthood also. Because I have friends, a lot of my male friends who are like 19, 18, like, oh, Sophie, like you're 21 and you have to ask your parents' permission. Yeah. What do you think this is? I'm sorry. Like, did you forget that I'm like, and it kind of like given me a little more a rite of passage of like adulthood where I kind of, respectfully put my foot down to my parents.
It's that like, sense of independence now. And it definitely happens because that's another thing with our culture, especially Hispanic Latinx. It's not that they do it because they're trying to be as overprotective. It's also the respect factor. Like, know that you have to be sure that, okay, it's all right, and boom. But once you're getting to a certain age, it's like, okay, now you can respect my choices as well.
Exactly. My parents, I did Pittsburgh for polyamcol, and it was the greatest experience ever. But literally the night before, my dad was like, you're not going. And I was like, but I am. And I kind of had to put my foot down because I said, I can't call Uncanny and be like, hey guys, my parents said I can't go. Like, I'm not 16. At 16, that's different. But I'm turning 22 like in a month, and it's kind of like this is sort of my career path in photography, which is now related in wrestling because I've been doing the most with it. And, I want to see more women in wrestling in terms of media and wrestling itself, but doing that type of stuff of like traveling and going all of this, even at a younger age, because I've seen guys do it at 16, 17. I've heard stories of I was 16 and I went to Canada for the first time with my friend who's a wrestler. And I want to have that experience for
definitely.
POC girls, because I think what really holds us back is really like there is sort of this thing, I guess it's machismo, where girls have to kind of deal with my dad won't let me, this and that. You got, and I've already dealt with that at 16, 17.
Well, yeah, it's always the double standard, I guess, especially with our culture. Like, I'll admit, like, again, like I said, I'm going into my 5th year now in wrestling. I want to say I was 17, 18. One of the first times I traveled, like, out of the state with wrestling. And it's easier when you're, again, a male. But I feel like, especially now with everything, the barriers changing and everything like that, it should be a little more like lenient in a way. Like, again, if you're making the right decisions, it should be respected, And I definitely see you're doing great things, and it's like I can see the protectiveness, but I see the parents little by little, they will understand that you're doing this not out of just like, oh, because I want to, but it's more like, hey, it's work, it's a job now.
It's a job now. It's a career path. It's what I'm passionate about. And, and also, like, my parents, I think I also know it's just coming from a place of, like, we want to make sure you're going to be successful.
Definitely,
we want to make sure
it's all out of love. It's not like they're trying to be controlling just because, no, it's our rule, that's it. It's more of, like, it's that tenderness. It's that love that family is supposed to be. And I feel like that's the biggest thing that if anyone learns from Hispanic culture is that it gets the bad gripe of, oh, they're very controlling. It's like, no, it's not the controlliveness. It's more of they care. Yeah, that's the biggest thing. And it goes, especially in this and just in life in general. So wrestling, it makes it a little harder at times because it's very hard to explain, like, oh, this is why I do this. This is why, like, I can only imagine the battle for hair because, like, I've had crazy colors in my hair. So having to explain at one point red, at one point blue, and I'm like, I have an image. Like, wrestling, you can't just go in.
What it is.
Like, you can't just be, like, normal in a sense. Like, wrestling, you're very abstract. It's very artsy. And it's like, yeah, I have to keep changing my hair because it's wrestling. So it's like, it's always going to be that fight. But at the end of the day, it's not out of that feeling of controlment. It's more of just love. Like,
yeah. It's funny with the hair. I feel like I went blonde because of quarantine, like the half one. But now it's kind of become my thing in wrestling. That's everyone like identifies me now, and I was like, oh man, am I gonna have to keep this up?
I saw you Saturday.
Oh, man, wait.
We're riding, and I'm like, that's Sofie. And when I saw you at the show, I'm like, yeah, I recognized you by your hair. Because it's a nice look. Like, it's different. Because it's like, you usually see, like, if people go blonde, it's like the full blonde. Or they'll do maybe the streaks on one end. But like that, it actually does look very nice. And it's different. So.
Thank you. Yeah, that's become my signature now. Because I feel like every wrestling cool opportunity I've been doing, like, post-Rona, has been with the hair. So I'm like, okay, I feel like I got a thing going on.
Yeah, I think it's been me, like, with silver now. I feel like I've gone so many colors, but the only one that usually, like, people are always, like, telling me, oh, that's different or that's cool. It's been my silver. So I feel like it's gonna stay. Like, even wrestling, like, my idea one day is to wear possibly a mask. I'm gonna have to have the top cut off, just so I can have my hair out.
I love
like,
it.
that's gonna be one day. But unfortunately, we are winding down a little bit, because if not, we'll be here for hours, and I don't think everyone wants to be here for one episode. I definitely have to bring you.
The 3-part series.
I definitely have to bring you back, and eventually, what I'm trying to do with Roundtable is have multiples. I definitely have to bring Hoke on here as well, just so we can tell some different stories. You can get some true Ecuadorian stories in there. But for those that want to follow you, where can they find you, Sofie?
My Instagram is Bulls in the Bronx, BullsInTheBrNX. My Twitter is Sofie All Time Low, because I'm still a pop punk fan. Sophie's Sofie All Time Low. Facebook, Sophia Vasquez, Sophia. I also. Everyone's like, do you go by Sophie or Sophia? I'm like, I go by both. I say Sophie's the art name.
Hey, you got a gimmick already. There you go.
I know, you gotta, I feel like if you Google Sofie Vasquez, there's like more of my stuff. But yeah, those are my main socials. You can follow me, right, to plug in some stuff. My exhibit is up until November 29th. It's at Soundview Park in the Bronx, on Metcalf Avenue and Lafayette Avenue, right by the baseball park. It's up till November 29th, but I was told that if it gets a lot of buzz about it, it can go up for a year.
Ooh.
So if y'all will be so kind, bring your mom, bring your grandma. It's outdoors, so it's you're not risking anything. It's not indoors or anything. And I think it's great. It's also conveniently placed. I chose that location because it was near Daro's, because that's where I started. That's, it's kind of like a little homage, even though we've parted ways. And also, what else to plug? My New York Times article, you can Google it, Photaville 2020, if you want to print.
It's funny, it's in the graphic. Like, I'm going to put the graphic right there. The cover for the zine is right there. Which, if I'm not mistaken, that is Smiley's mask on the cover, right? Okay. Because I'm like, I feel like I was like, wait, that's Smiley's mask. Like,
yeah, I have to, when I see Smiley at Violence and Suffering this Sunday, I'm going to get him a copy and have him sign my copy. Yeah, I have a zine. I have a few copies left. I'm very grateful that the first run of 50 sold out. That was incredible. I really didn't think that was going to happen, but it did. And I still have about, I think, 30 copies left. So feel free, if you want to order one, just DM me in one of those social medias, and I will we'll coordinate, and I'll send you a zine. To support a fellow Ecuadorian photographer in this Hispanic Heritage Month. But yeah, so that's me. You can follow me on the socials. And you can just see my antics of going to wrestling shows and lots of memes. I'm a very big meme person, so you will be entertained.
There you go, guys. Definitely support. Everything is going to be in the link. The links are going to be down below. I'll definitely even have the address there so people can go check it out. I definitely have to go very soon. I have to go check it out as well, just because it's great art and you got to support, got to show some love. So guys, thank you again for watching. This has been episode 8. If you want to follow me, you can do so at Ray_Ramundo. That is on Instagram. That is on Twitter. If you find me on Facebook, as always, just don't be weird. That's all. That's always what I ask. And it's the only thing. Like, I feel like with Facebook, it's like you usually only want people there. They're like, okay, you're cool. But it's like then you find people that's like, why you gotta be weird?
It's like, why you gotta make this weird, bro? I thought we were chill. Now we've made it weird.
Oh, man. But guys, definitely thank you guys for watching. Like I mentioned, this series is going to continue here as we're trying to get through Hispanic Heritage Month. More videos coming soon. I just recorded another one today. Top 10 influential Latino, Hispanic, Latinx influential wrestlers. So go check that out as well. That will be coming possibly tomorrow when this video is posted. So check that out. But thank you again, Sophie, for joining me on the Roundtable. I hope you enjoyed. I'll definitely be bringing you back because this conversation isn't over just yet. So we got to keep it going. I feel like that's something the next time all three of us are at a show, we have to take a picture though. Because I was going to comment under the one of you and Hoke like, so y'all didn't call the last Equa for a picture? That's messed up. Y'all left me out.
He's like, see how it is. You got La Costa versus La Sierra right in here. Like, we got a turf war going
That's what
on.
it is. It's because I'm from Cuenca. Y'all left me out. That's messed up. But
just because I'm from La Costa, I don't have to be so salty like the ocean. Jeez, bro.
But thank you guys again. Till the next one, as always, be good people. Be wise. Be genuine. Just do better. Love you all. Follow the law. Peace. And we are out.